Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday and welcome to our Teach and Learn. We'll give a couple of minutes for our members to join, for those who are still joining, and I'll use this time to not raffle a sweater today, but to talk about our conference that will happen on May 13 and 14 here in Madison at the beautiful Monona Terrace. It's a reminder to come and chat and to listen to our wonderful speakers, to chat to your colleagues, to meet us face to face, which I have to mention a Brainstorm conference. It was so good to see and to meet and to chat with so many of you. We saw so many members of WiscNet and it was fun times. So once again, May 13, 14, beautiful Monona Terrace, WiscNet Connections. I hope we'll see you there. So I hope those who have joined, and we'll keep admitting people as we go. But now, officially, welcome to our Teach and Learn. Third Thursday of the month, and Teach and Learn with Teach Network. So that's a fun one. And today we'll be talking about the new Teach Network, about organizations that are involved in it. And we'll hear from Matt, who will be representing Teach all administrative questions. We'll hear from our very own Josh, how WiscNet falls into place and what we do. And hopefully from Dan Meyer, AT&T, who will be talking about technical capabilities of network and what is different from the last one, which was called Badger. So it will be an educational session, and I hope we'll all learn a lot of new things, and we'll know which piece of puzzle will fall where. We all are working together. We are working to improve it and to make it work and to make it wonderful. Also, we'll hear from Aneta, our controller. Short message in the end, and stay tuned. Well, with that, this session is being recorded, and feel free to ask questions. Leave them in chat. We will leave about 15-20 minutes in the end to answer them, or we can answer them live as well. We'll see. I think all the housekeeping notes are done, and with that, I pass the mic on to Matt.
Thank you very much, Avers. So let me just bring up my presentation here. So this is we're going to talk about a little bit about the Teach network today. So let's see. Here we go. Okay, so the Teach network. This is something that's vastly different than what we've had in the past. Teach has its own contract, and so if you remember the past two contracts, we were kind of combined with the state network all onto one contract. So I'm hopeful that this will allow us to align with some of our customer needs, as well as the invoicing that we provide to our customers, as well as E-rate. And also, we can align with the E-rate dates also. So I think this is going to be a very large help to us. And again, my name is Matt. I'm the admin here. A lot of you have probably worked with these two other folks. Zach places the orders for us. He's a service delivery coordinator, and Judy is a contract admin. So we all, even though only myself and Zach work directly for Teach, these are really the three people that are sort of in charge of what we do and in charge of Teach, and you probably are going to come across all these folks at some point. So the Teach program, just very briefly here, we are in the statutes. We subsidize what USAC calls the Cat 1 circuit, and every year I file the 471 for E-rate for the Cat 1 circuit only. And again, the E-rate application window is generally open from the middle of January to towards the middle and the end of March. So I think the date closes on March 27th of this year. And again, we do not subsidize the ISP. We do what USAC calls the Cat 1 circuit. Some of our policy highlights, you can look at the website for more info. But when you come on to teach as a customer, you are on for 12 months, or you may be subject for the full cost. And sometimes the full cost, can be, maybe 4 to 8 times as much as what you pay, because all of our customers are either going to pay $100 per month, or 250 for a gig of service or more. And if you require more bandwidth, we can certainly do that, but we have to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. So we expect that there's a demonstrated need. And we do look at the bandwidth graphs. We work with AT&T and GLS. We meet with them once per month to review what the highs are. So generally, if somebody's approaching 80% or over 80% on their usage, they would qualify for an increase in the bandwidth. Most of our customers don't come anywhere close to hitting that 80%. But again, just to be sure, we do meet with the AT&T and the GLS folks once a month to review the highs. And a change from the past, we don't send out the notifications if there's a maintenance, if it happens during the evening hours. Lori, some of you may remember her. She used to do that. She retired. And so we're trying to do this a little more efficiently. And the big news that we have is the BadgerNet contract has been extended to June 30th of 2024. So I think AT&T hopes to move everybody by that particular date. And I think that we are at I think we just hit the 50% mark either today or tomorrow. But as of this morning, AT&T has a plan to accelerate that. And just recently, as of last night, we had a site go with AT&T's new procedure. And it was a very large site, one of our larger sites. And it took, I think, 14 minutes to migrate that site without any amount of downtime. So that was a very big positive. And I think the hope is that AT&T will be able to accelerate moving forward. So the migration is what we're undergoing right now. And the most important thing is you're going to receive a welcome letter when you move. This will improve the performance, the efficiency, and the cost. And sometimes our customers don't always see the cost that Teach pays because they only pay the $100 and the $250, but there's a significant cost that goes above and beyond that. So over time, things in the IT world sometimes cost less. So we want to make sure our contract is not, too long, and that we can take advantage of the reduced cost over time. So, and this year, or this time around, we hope our customers do user acceptance testing. That's something that we'd like you to do. And the reason is because if you're not getting the bandwidth that you paid for, that Teach paid for, we'd like to know about it right away. You can call the GLS help desk. Their info is in the welcome letter. I have it posted on the website also. And just so you're aware, in the past, what has happened is that some people will go a year, sometimes more, and then they call the help desk and say, hey, I'm not getting my bandwidth. And we say, well, when did this start? And they say, well, it happened a year ago. So that makes troubleshooting kind of hard. So if you could do that right away and make sure you get what everybody's paying for. And again, there's another change here, the help desk. Some of you were accustomed to working with our prior help desk, and this information, again, it's on the website, it's in the welcome letter. So these guys are 24/7. When you call them, it's helpful to have that 4-digit site ID that you get when you log into the Teach portal. And the last point here is if you have an issue where you need to contact the help desk, and you need to somehow follow up, or you have another issue, make sure you go to Teach and make sure you have the ticket number, and give me a short description of what happened. If something didn't happen to your satisfaction, you can always reach out to us, and we are more than willing to help. But again, these guys are open 24/7. So if you have a help desk issue, definitely contact them. That's what they're there for. The other project that we're working on besides the move to the new contract is in our portal, there's multi-factor authentication that's being required. And this came from DOA. It's two-factor authentication. The directions again are on the website. It's under services in the upper right. So this is an app that for me, I have it on my phone, and it's not really. Some people think it's new. It's not too new. In the past I've worked for three other companies that use the same thing. So on my phone, if you were to look, you would see those three other organizations plus Teach. So it worked. You know, I have to do it. We have to do it. There are no exceptions. I can assure you that Teach and DOA take your data and your security very, very seriously. And this is part of what DOA is going to do to help ensure that that happens. So again, the directions are on the website, and follow the directions. And then the next thing you need to do is send your ID and your email address to Teach, and I will set you up. I announced this about a year ago. We have roughly 655 customers, and I think about 117 have done this so far as of about 2 weeks ago. So I'm really hoping that more people do it, because my plan is to add more functionality to the Teach portal, and that's how you'll interact with us. But we can't do that if the customers don't have MFA. So make sure you go ahead and do that. And get that done as soon as you're able to do it. And one of the things we had hoped to do is have the LOA in the portal, but because we've only had about 117 or so people do that, we've had to think of another way to get this done. And the LOA is something that USAC requires, and this basically allows Teach to file for your Cat 1 E-rate services and then give you the discount. We pay the full price to AT&T, and then you get the discount. You get the $100 or the $250 per month. These LOAs are generally good for about 5 years. So, and again, our LOAs expire at the end of June. So this needs to be done. Zach is heading up this particular project. It needs to be signed. It needs to be dated. It should not be a contractor. It should be somebody permanent at the site. If you're not able to do this, Teach will not be able to submit E-rate for your site. So you risk having to pay the full cost for that Cat 1 service. And again, it's like a 2 or 3 page document. It's from USAC. It's very, very standard. So Zach has sent out, I think, most of these to the libraries. He's working on the schools. And we've gotten a very good success rate so far. A lot of people get it done within maybe 2 days or a week. So, it's a very simple document. Go ahead and read it. And then on the bottom, you can sign it. And again, we're using DocuSign. And so far that's been pretty successful. So that is all I have. Are there any questions for me?
Looks like there's one in the chat that just said, did you say you hope to have everyone moved by the end of June 2024?
The end of June of 2024, that is correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Matt? Definitely feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you have.
And if not, then you can think of your questions, and we'll have some time in the end. Now, moving on to Josh. Josh will talk about WiscNet, piece of puzzle in this relationship. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, hello everyone. Wait just a sec to start sharing. So my name is Josh Gorton. I'm a platform engineer here at WiscNet. I've been here for just over 8 years, and I'll try to touch base on everything as it relates to WiscNet on Teach. My bias will be very technical, so I'll try not to get too far in the weeds. Please feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions you have about WiscNet. So WiscNet on Teach, our role is to provide network access, which is an internet service to members that have WiscNet on Teach. This diagram kind of shows the interop between WiscNet, the Teach network, and last mile providers in your area. There's a lot to take in here. So at the very top here is kind of a really high level overview of WiscNet's network, where WiscNet has core routers and we connect to the rest of the internet, whether that's members, the internet as a whole, or organizations like the Big Ten Academic Alliance, internet to caching like Netflix and stuff like that. So WiscNet has 2 handoffs to the Teach network. One is in Madison and one is in Milwaukee. These are 100 gig interfaces. On the WiscNet side, our core routers are Juniper MXs, and on the Teach side, they're also Juniper MX, I believe. The Teach network has a redundant network in the state of Wisconsin that allows connectivity from the WiscNet core to the last mile provider. Last mile provider might be one of many organizations, AT&T, I think like Frontier, maybe even Spectrum, organizations like that. Organizations that actually have cables in the ground to your location. And then on the other side of the last mile provider, Teach places a Juniper EX switch to help terminate the connection from the last mile provider, and then that gets handed off to a WiscNet managed ASR 920 at your location if you have that. So that's a lot of technical layering. Ultimately, what's happening is Teach, in partnership with the last mile provider such as AT&T, is providing WiscNet a layer 2 VLAN all the way from the WiscNet core in either Madison, Milwaukee, all the way to your location. I think the easiest way to think about this is if you want a really long cable to go from your location all the way to WiscNet to get internet, how do we achieve that? And this is how it's achieved on the Teach network. The dotted blue line kind of shows how your path to WiscNet might be built. For WiscNet side of things, from a layer 3 point of view, we build a point-to-point connection from our core all the way to your site with /30, so 2 IP addresses, and then we'll run a routing protocol, either OSPF or BGP. We're slowly migrating everybody to BGP so that we can do a few different things, but primarily manage and monitor the WiscNet managed ASR 920. And then the WiscNet managed ASR 920 at your location will hand you off your public IP addresses. Often it's like a /29 with 7 usable IP addresses, or it can be larger. So your public IP addresses are actually routed at your location on that Cisco ASR 920. And then something we're considering doing in the future, which I wanted to bring up on this diagram, is running 2 BGP sessions, one from the WiscNet core in Madison and one from the WiscNet core in Milwaukee, all the way to each member WiscNet managed Cisco ASR 920. This won't give complete redundancy, but it will give improved redundancy between the Teach core network and the WiscNet core network handoffs, so that if either of those went down, your traffic would dynamically fail over to and from Madison and Milwaukee. That is not complete. We're kind of in the proof of concept phase right now. We successfully demoed that on a WiscNet test circuit, and we're looking to demo that on member production circuits sometime in the near future. There's a lot here on this diagram. Does anyone have any questions? I can come back to this in the future too. Okay. I wanted to give an example of what the physical devices at your location might look like. This does vary depending on the last mile provider in your DMARC room. So this is an AT&T example where AT&T has dark fiber into the building. They installed a Sienna, what is effectively a layer 2 switch, but it's really a specialized device for monitoring and delivering Ethernet services, Sienna 3930. So one of the ports on the Sienna goes towards the Teach network, and the other port goes towards your service handoff at this location. And then just below that, there is an example of a Teach managed Juniper EX switch. This one actually happens to be managed by WiscNet, but it's the same model that's deployed at many of your locations. So there's a connection from the Sienna to the Teach managed Juniper EX, and then Teach provides a handoff either directly to you or to the WiscNet managed ASR 920. In most cases, it's the latter. And then WiscNet can provide you one or multiple handoffs off of the Cisco ASR 920. And again, your public IPs are actually routed on the Cisco ASR 920 on the port or ports that are handed off to you. I think in some examples, the last mile provider may also install an ASR 920. So if you have two ASR 920s and you know one belongs to WiscNet and one you're not sure what it is, it may belong to the other provider. And just for fun, because I like looking at routers, this is one of the two core routers that lands a Teach 100 gig connection. This is the one that's in Madison. This photo was actually taken during a power outage in Madison, and this router was on its redundant power connection. So it's got some fun chassis alarms here showing real world problems. With this router, both the one in Milwaukee and Madison have redundant backbone connections, both kind of east and west, and redundant line cards and redundant routing engines. So kind of any one component can fail other than the actual handoff to Teach. I wanted to go over what monitoring we provide. So all of our monitoring services are from WiscNet's data centers in either Eau Claire or Madison to the WiscNet managed Cisco ASR 920 at your location. There's quite a few things that we do. Primarily, and perhaps most interesting to you, is we do SNMP polling to all Cisco ASR 920s from both Madison and Eau Claire. We do that for redundancy in case we have a data center outage and just to have two perspectives from two different monitoring services. And we can provide you information like packets per second, bits per second, packet size, interface errors, packet discards. If you have a fiber optic handoff, it can provide like laser light levels, everything like that. And later I'll show you how you can view that. We also use a Cisco proprietary tool called IPSLA, which does things like measure loss, jitter on packets, and round trip time from our data centers to the ASR 920 and back. That can just be useful to help identify issues. WiscNet gathers syslogs from all the ASR 920s, and we keep them I struggle to use this word because, our server is going to have critical problems or something, but indefinitely. Right now we have decades of logs from WiscNet managed routers. The only kind of flaw with syslogs is if there's like a circuit outage or an ASR 920 rebooting. Obviously, it can't send syslogs during that instance, and eventually the local log will fall off. So if there's like a current outage issue, that's kind of the only real instance where syslogs aren't as useful. And then we run a revision control. Hourly, we use open source software called Rancid, which logs into each of the ASR 920s and checks for differences in the configuration. And then emails staff here at WiscNet if there is a change. WiscNet runs a service we call graphs.wiscnet.net. You can navigate to that URL and search for your institution. Let us know if you have any issues finding your circuits, but you can find your teach circuit ID and find out a lot of information about your circuit by doing that. Kind of just walking through this a little bit. We provide you a lot of different graphs on this page. To get a different time length, you can click one of the links at the top of the page to go from 6 hours to 1 day, all the way back to several years, to see things like traffic demand over time. One thing that's worth noting is that the technology providing these graphs is based on RRD data, and that gets less granular over time, so that file size don't become infinite in size. As you go back to like months and then years, the data gets averaged. So if you're looking back years, your data is less granular and less reliable than data from today. Then going down on this page, you can see a bunch of information, your member organization name. If your organization name changes, you might need to send us an email and be like, hey, that's our old name. The device A, that's the device at your location that WiscNet manages, and we give it a shortened named. So in this district, this example, I think the district is Racine Unified School District. We gave it a shorter name that's easier for humans to type. The device Z is which core router on WiscNet's network you connect to. We try to make them pretty easy to read. So in this case, you can tell it's in Milwaukee. We provide the last mile provider circuit ID, which you can see here is ASR 920 circuit ID, the transport provider ID. Interface A relates to the Cisco ASR 920 again, and that's on port 5. So that's the uplink to teach network. Interface Z is the core router interface in Milwaukee. So because it's many members being delivered to a 100 gig interface, each member has a dedicated sub interface. In this instance, 3267 bandwidth. So this is a 10 gig circuit. Provider is the teach network, and then a WiscNet circuit ID. So if you call our NOC or our support team, that can help find things quickly. And then we provide an auto-generated diagram here on the right, kind of showing you how at least teach and the WiscNet ASR 920 plug in together. Really, that should kind of be like a cloud in the middle of, we don't have all the details, but here's what we have. And then as you scroll down the page, it's the different types of graphs that we provide you. So the ones you can see here are packets per second and bits per second from both the ASR 920's perspective and from our core router's perspective. And that's why these graphs are kind of flipped, because from the core router's perspective, there's a lot of traffic out to the member. And from the member's perspective, it's, download in from the internet. So that's why you see the flip between blue and green on this graph. I wanted to quickly go over our different ways to contact us. First and foremost, wiscnet.net/support gives you a bunch of different links to tools and ways to contact us. We kind of have two support centers, and one is 24/7, 365, and that's our network operations center. they're best for reporting outages to. They'll do things like call out to GLS or other providers after hours to try to start investigating an outage. And then our support team can do that plus everything else. So our support team is 7:45 to 4:45 Monday through Friday. There's the phone number and email address. So anything beyond outages, or if you want to try to escalate an outage issue that you're having, or if you need more IP addresses or a question on graphs or anything like that, the support team is there to help. And then WiscNet currently uses a status page, so status.wiscnet.net, to post outages, and you can subscribe to updates for your institution at the top of the status page. And then I thought this was interesting and fun. We're able to, with one of our internal tools, stack traffic graphs. So the red and green here are both 100 gig connections to teach from WiscNet stacked on top of each other to kind of show you peak utilization. We're currently getting up towards 55 gigabits per second on busy traffic days. That's traffic that WiscNet's delivering to members over the Teach network. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Looks like the only one that was in the chat was that does Teach use the graphs that you showed Josh to determine their current capacity?
I think I have heard that Teach does look at our graphs.
Yes, we do look at the WiscNet graphs, and then GLS has their graphs also. And if you were to look at some of the GLS things that we see, sometimes like a lot of our sites are probably below maybe 25% usage. So there's a lot of capacity that WiscNet has, that we have. So bandwidth generally should not be a problem.
Something I maybe briefly touched base on, but I think it's worth re-mentioning, is our SNMP monitoring that you see here on graphs.wiscnet.net is every 5 minutes, and then it creates an average. So if you, let's say, did a speed test that saturated 1 gigabit per second, but it only lasted 30 seconds, that won't show up on this graph. You'll get an average of your total traffic usage for 5 minutes. That can just be confusing. So that's just worth noting.
Along with these graphs, another question was that for this one, like if the transport provider still says BadgerNet 3, that the assumption is that that won't change until they've officially installed the Teach hardware at the site.
Yeah, so on the Teach to WiscNet handoff level, both BadgerNet 3 and Teach circuits are delivered on the same 200 gig interfaces. So from our perspective on a backbone handoff, Teach and BadgerNet 3 are blended. And yeah, the graphs.wiscnet.net should update within a day or two when you go from BadgerNet 3 to Teach to show the new information.
Another one was, along with Rancid, what is the tool that you use to manage and generate device configuration? I think that I saw it at a previous WiscNet conference, but I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, that's super happy to talk about that. It's a slight rabbit hole. So we use Netbox for IPAM. So for IP address management, we use open source software called Netbox. And then we use Python scripts in addition to some other tools to model Cisco ASR 920s in Netbox So that's actually built into NetBox. You can like model a router, like a router's interfaces, and you can apply IP addresses to them and do things like apply autonomous system number for BGP routing, let's say. And then we use Python scripts to generate a configuration on NetBox, and then to push that out to the Cisco ASR 920 in the field. During that process, it's a human being modeling the ASR 920 in NetBox, and then a script to generate the config. And then that actually compares the generated config to the production config and shows the difference. And then you can choose to push it. There are a few different open source tools involved with making that happen. That's probably a half-hour long presentation in itself. But yeah, in particular, NetBox is doing a lot of the work for us, at least as far as IP addresses and device modeling. The other open source tools we're using for the different monitoring and config generation, Observium for SNMP monitoring, Cisco IP SLA is just a Cisco router in Eau Claire and Madison. And then that's included, I think, with most Cisco licenses. So all of our ASR 920s are licensed for that. Syslog is just some Linux syslog. It's escaping me right now. And yeah, revision controls rancid. And then to provide WiscNet staff a pretty interface, we're using View VC to actually look at the config differences.
Awesome. Real quick, so that we can get Dan Meyer is on the call with us today to just quick talk about what's new and different design-wise, infrastructure, policy with the new network. And then we can pop back over to questions.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, I am Dan Meyer. I'm the principal architect primarily for the Teach and DOA networks for state of Wisconsin. I spent about 22 years at AT&T, primarily working in the state and local education marketplace, school districts, libraries, many of WiscNet's peers, and then finished out my career as an architect at AT&T, and then left, and I work for a company that does as an AT&T service provider or solution provider, which basically represents or cares for and provides AT&T products and services. We're part of the contract delivery for the state of Wisconsin Teach Network, and include a number of resources that are currently working on the project. So that's who I am. And thanks, Josh. That was an informative and an interesting presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm just going to hit over, like was said, network architecture, new capabilities, and some new offerings discussion for working through. So what's new and different? So first off, I want to take a step back and kind of, as a compare and contrast, look back at what BadgerNet looked like in terms of how it was architected and designed, and then you'll see that's a big difference between BadgerNet and the Teach Network. So first off, the BadgerNet network was a completely custom network. All of these links you see here, these are the 4 AT&T core routers. They are located in, there's a stack in Madison and there's a stack in Milwaukee. They're co-located in the AT&T POPs in both locations, so they're completely on battery backup and UPS for long-term capability. And then there were circuits or links that went from those the provider edge routers into all of the different access providers, and then these routers were located primarily in the access provider space. So Access Wisconsin, it was located in Madison, Eau Claire, Frontier, Sun Prairie, and Wausau. Those are Frontier central offices. Lumen chose to put them in our facility, stacked on top of our equipment. And then OptiWAN is a little bit of a difference. So if you're on Spectrum, Those are connected to AT&T's core switched Ethernet network, and then they come into our network here. And so we had a lot of, there were a number of 100 gig links, but there were a lot of custom links and custom circuits capability that were required to maintain the network. And it was maintained by an AT&T lifecycle management MRS team. So what we saw is it was a pretty complex network, is what I would say. There were a lot of routers and pieces of equipment to keep up, and a lot of tracking of circuit capacity, capability, size and capacity to make sure that we kept up and made sure that there was no impediment or restriction in the network based on the links that were coming back and forth from the access providers. So I can take a stop. If anybody would like to ask a question now on this one, that's fine. Or I can take them at the end, whichever is right. Okay, I'll just move on to what's different in BadgerNet and Teach Network. So in the Teach Network, I started to look probably about 3 years ago, before the RFP came out for the state, and how to improve the network. And one of the things that AT&T had done in the intervening 7, 8 years, 9 years, I think, between the actual RFP, is that we had established a switched Ethernet network that had direct connectivity to all of the other, or almost every carrier in the United States, switched Ethernet networks. And so they built the connectivity, and we were able to use the standard AT&T product, AT&T switched Ethernet, and connect into all the access providers, not just the ones that were traditionally on BadgerNet, but quite a few more have been added. I just listed the most common ones that you would be familiar with. These are your access providers or your LECs that you work with. But the idea here being is that it greatly simplifies the network. AT&T is responsible. They have an entire team of people who do nothing but capacity planning and management, and make sure that all of the connections that go to these access providers are sized appropriately, and they increase them all the time, and they migrate traffic all the time. And that's done automatically. It's not something that we have to do separately or as part of managing the network ourselves in this. It's also important to note that this is AT&T's standard product. So we use this all the time for customers all over the country, whereas BadgerNet was built primarily as a completely custom network. And it was the best way we could meet those requirements back then, but this is a much simpler approach. You see, we got rid of 10 routers in the middle of the network and aggregated everything. When these connections come in, they look like any other node in the ASE network. And so it facilitates us doing things, which has made it a lot easier, I think, for the school districts and libraries writing the network. And then also I should mention that GLS is the management organization that's taken over. They are a very large network management organization. They have a 24/7 NOC, which we did not have on the BadgerNet network. And they have resources available, three tiers of people who are available 24/7 by 365 that we can escalate to and have better response to problems and issues on the network. So with that, I'll go into some specifics if there's no questions about that. You know what, I probably actually go here. Okay. So this is the how a typical head end or typical organization is designed and built in the Teach network. So first off, there are 100 gig. There's actually 140 gig of data that goes from the Juniper router into the ASE network. in both Madison and Milwaukee. So it's a total, total of 280 gig of capability right now. In addition, we have 100 gig that goes both to circuits that go to WiscNet and 100 gig that goes to AT&T's internet service as well. And so there's lots of capacity, far more than just the data network. So if you're taking a WiscNet example, if it's an organization like this where it has both data and internet service coming to a head-end location, and then they're serving other locations like this, what we do is we take the VLAN that comes from WiscNet, and that's handed off, or can be handed off in both Madison and Milwaukee. And then we encapsulate that into VLAN and transport it to the site, hand it off to the router that's usually a Cisco 920 for WiscNet, and then that goes through your firewall into your network. Data that goes between your sites usually goes into a router at the edge here for most school districts or library systems, and then it comes back out and goes through this data network and goes directly to the other sites. What's very different about this network is that in BadgerNet, all of the traffic from every single site ended up going back to the core in the network, and at the core, the traffic was shaped, policed, and then retransmitted or sent back out to the head end or to the remote site, which was appropriate. In the Teach network, all of your traffic that goes between the sites goes directly from the site across the network to the head end. It doesn't come through the head ends here. We're not dependent upon these head ends being operational for you to have connection between your sites. Obviously, we are dependent upon the head ends being operational in order to deliver any ISP services or WiscNet services. But the traffic itself goes always between the site back and forth. It's shared. We don't, by default, do any shaping or policing on these circuits as they come in, and they go in and they go to the head end. And that allows the traffic here to borrow back and forth between the data and the internet connection to the full capacity of the circuit that goes in. So we do support, we do have a EVC in the ASE network. That's an Ethernet virtual channel, we call it. So there is one of these for every school district or library or organization that shares or that has a voice and data network. If the network, if you're connected for ISP only services, then there's a shared VLAN or EVC that goes just for the ISP only sites and services. But you see how this is, instead of traffic going from there, going through all the 5 routers that we had before and potentially backing all the way out, it goes through the access point and then directly to those sites. We do support layer 2 or layer 3, and we do have, for all the organizations that have a layer 3 routing or layer 3, we are using OSPF routing at every site, advertising your LANs to send traffic directly between the sites as appropriate. So everything doesn't go to the head end unless you tell us you want it to. So I want to reiterate that this is a completely private network. It is not, there's not internet. And while internet does write it, it is not an internet service. It's a switched Ethernet service, completely private. So that's the big difference. You'll see that we don't, on the old network, there was policing. There was a policy statement in the RFP from the original Teach network that required data, or not from Teach network, from the BadgerNet network, that required the internet service to be treated as the lowest class of service priority. That is no longer the case in this network. We'll treat the ISP traffic with the same way as the data traffic, as no preference is given to either one of them unless you request that we make a change or we do something different in your particular network. I think that was it on that one. Sorry, I'm going to do a couple other things. So for the NTE, I wanted to make sure that you're aware as a policy practice, it is a fully managed device. And its features and capabilities are available to be used by the school district or library as you're subscribing to it. So that means additional ports, additional handoffs, additional routing capabilities, whatever the device supports can be requested. You can ask for it. You can send a request in and ask if that's something that, you know, for example, if you want to do another handoff for a reason or whatever, then you can give us a call, let us know, or submit a ticket, or you just call in or send an email in to Teach to ask if that's okay. So, and then there's a couple of services that are offered under the contract that I wanted to make sure that you are aware of and that you've seen in the network. So AT&T's dynamic exchange service, this basically allows you to connect to anybody in the country that uses AT&T's network, whether that's ASE network or an AVPN network or whatever they use for their connectivity. This allows interconnectivity between multiple sites. And then there's the NetBond for cloud. It gives you private access to a number of cloud service providers. These are all optional services that are listed on the contract and are available to you to use. There's an enterprise traffic protector, which allows you to protect your circuits from malware or ransomware attack. It uses a DDoS-based filtering process, or not a DDoS-based, but a DNS-based filtering that's available. And then there's also a DDoS defense for public sector, which allows for a fixed monthly charge. There's no overage fees, no matter how long the attack lasts. You can use that DDoS service if you are interested. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
And there is one in the chat. So potentially we could use this network to route traffic between buildings on our campus.
Yes, potentially. Right? Yep. Router switch. You could do that. Now, most of the sites only have a single, or only have two 10 gig or two fiber interfaces. But yeah, up to the capability of the device. Give us a call and let us know if you want to plug in some or do some other routing between your sites or campus.
Sounds
real
good.
Quick.
And yeah, go ahead, Michaela.
Real quick before we get into any other questions, I want to quick pass the torch to Annetta from WiscNet real quick. She has a few E-rate updates real quick.
Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Annetta Kostrova. I'm with WiscNet. I just wanted to give a reminder to those who have not filed a Form 471 for ISP services. As of this morning, we have around 59 WiscNet members who have not filed Form 471. Teach, as Matt said, files for Category 1 circuit only. So the school still needs to file Form 471 for ISP services. DPI sent in January an email with all the instructions for all the 3 ISP options. So please reference to that. The deadline for Form 471, I'm putting that in the chat, is March 27th. So you have around 6 days and 12 hours to file the form. We will be sending reminders to those that we know don't have a form filed yet. So if you get an email, please check that form and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Annetta. Yeah, now we have a few minutes here left to if anyone has any questions, drop them in the chat. Feel free to unmute and ask your questions to Matt, Josh, or Dan. We have had some pretty good ones. We will be sharing the PowerPoint after this session. Everyone will get the recording. And then another one was about if we feel with the need to upgrade the current Teach circuit from 1 gig to 10 gigs, if you contact Teach or WiscNet. If you put your request through the Teach portal, that'll be good. Matt, is there any other update on that process? I know it looked a little different with the BadgerNet contract.
Yeah, so if you need an increase in your bandwidth, you can place it through the portal. You need to be authorized. So if you're not, you can follow the directions, do the MFA there. The directions are on the portal. Again, it's on the right side of the homepage under services and requests. And then I can get you set up, and you'll have to tell me what school or library you need access to. I will get you set up, and then you can place your order.
Hi, everybody. This is Kika from WiscNet. Just a quick question on that, Matt. Is this, so start with you and then we go from there? Because I know that in the past we've done some conversations with the members about, you mentioned that they need to be at 80% capacity. So does this assume that they already did all that homework and they have the 80% capacity need ahead of time then?
Yeah, you should do your homework first, but if you did not, what we do on our side is we look at the GLS graphs, we look at the WiscNet graphs for anybody, you know, and the 80% is not a hard number. If you're approaching that, that's fine. If you have some sort of initiative, I know in the past with some of the schools, they say, well, we're not close to 80% now, but we're deploying Chromebooks, so we'd like to have an increase. So, you know, that hasn't happened in a while. I think a lot of sites do already have the Chromebooks, but in the past that was new. So, so then, you know, if you're at, 40%, you're going to deploy the Chromebooks, we can give you an increase. But again, when I meet with the GLS folks, we just don't have sites, that even approach, even half. A lot of them are like a quarter usage or so. And whatever bandwidth you have now, we can always increase it up or down. It's, whatever you have now is not for your life. So if something happens at some point down the road, you can get what you need.
All right, thanks.
Quick question for Dan. I want to know the difference between the ISP and then the data, like the main difference. Like, is it like voice will fall on the data?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
It's like voice service will fall under the data category. I just want to know the main difference between the ISP and then the data that in your graph.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where it is. So if the voice is coming across the internet, from an internet-based provider, then it would be internet until it gets, or ISP until it gets to the site and goes through the firewall. Inner site voice, it would be considered data. And I guess it's possible that if you have an internet-based phone service provider, that they're actually sending the data back to across the internet and then back to the site too. So it would end up being both in that case.
Right. We are approaching 11. Actually, it just switched to 11. So I will enter all of the contact information for everyone that was on the call today in my post email that has the recording on it. And then we are skipping a couple months to promote our conference. So our next Teach and Learn won't be until June. So keep an eye out for communications for that coming in May. Thank you so much to Matt, Josh, and Dan for wonderful presentations, so informative. And if anyone has any questions following this, feel free to reach out to us and we'll pass along the question, or just to Matt or Dan directly. Wonderful. So we will see you guys at the next Teach and Learn.
Bye.
Thank you.